I'm leaving you, Elena. For Sophia. The champagne glass slipped from my fingers, shattering against the polished floor with a sound that cut through the celebration like a gunshot. 60 people at my business anniversary party turned to stare. Friends, clients, colleagues who'd come to celebrate 20 years of my success. The gentle murmur of appreciation died instantly. My husband, David, stood there, chest puffed out, savoring what he clearly believed was my public execution. Behind him, partially hidden by a display, I caught sight of Sophia Martinez, our 26-year-old marketing coordinator, the woman I'd mentored for 2 years, helped navigate her career, treated like the daughter I already had. She clutched her wine glass with white knuckles, dark eyes wide with what looked like genuine shock. Either she was an exceptional actress, or David's public announcement hadn't been part of their plan. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Someone cleared their throat. A phone camera clicked. I could feel the moment crystallizing into gossip, into social media posts, into the kind of public humiliation that destroys reputations and careers. Instead of crumbling, I smiled. "Congratulations on your honesty, David." My voice carried clearly across the room, steady and warm, as if I were addressing a room full of potential clients. I reached into my vintage clutch, ironically, a gift from David 3 anniversaries ago, and withdrew a thick cream envelope sealed with burgundy wax. The envelope I'd been carrying for 6 weeks, waiting for exactly this moment. "What's that?" David's confident facade flickered as I placed the envelope on the reception desk, beside the guest book where our friends had been signing in all evening.
"A little surprise of my own," I replied, my tone conversational despite the fact that everyone in the room was now listening with rapt attention. "Something I've been preparing while you've been finding yourself." David's face shifted from triumph to confusion. Sophia took a step backward, disappearing deeper into the shadows between displays. I turned to address our stunned guests, many of whom had traveled from across the country for tonight's celebration. "Please, continue enjoying the evening. Tonight, we're simply witnessing the beginning of a transformation." With that, I walked toward the exit, my heels clicking against the floor with the rhythm of a countdown. Behind me, I heard David's voice, no longer confident, but high-pitched with panic. "Elena, what the hell is in that envelope? What have you done?" I paused at the door, looking back at the man I'd once loved enough to build a life with. "Nothing you didn't do first, David. I just documented it better." The cool evening air hit my face as I stepped outside. For the first time in months, I could breathe freely. My phone immediately began buzzing with calls and texts from the guests inside, but I silenced it. Tomorrow would bring questions, explanations, and the beginning of a very public unraveling. Tonight, I wanted to savor the moment when David opened that envelope and discovered how thoroughly I'd been paying attention. My name is Elena Vasquez, and at 43, I had just executed the most satisfying reveal of my career.
My daughter Isabella had texted me a photo of her cap and gown from her NYU dorm room, reminding me that her graduation ceremony was just 2 months away. The irony wasn't lost on me, that while I was celebrating 20 years of building something meaningful and preparing to watch my 21-year-old daughter launch her own career in journalism, David was planning to demolish our family in the most public way possible. But I'd been ready for months. The signs had been impossible to ignore once I started paying attention with the same analytical eye I used in business. The suspicious late nights that coincided with Sophia's social media posts from trendy bars. The way David had suddenly developed strong opinions about photography, Sophia's specialty, after years of dismissing my work as decorative nonsense. The expensive dinners charged to our business credit card on nights when he claimed to be working late at his architectural firm. Most telling of all was the way he'd started criticizing everything about me and our life together. My age, my obsession with work, the way I spent too much time with clients and employees. Classic behavior of someone creating justification for what they'd already decided to do. The envelope David was now staring at contained 6 months of meticulous documentation. Screenshots of deleted texts I'd recovered from our shared cloud storage, credit card statements showing charges to hotels, restaurants, and jewelry stores, photos of David and Sophia leaving her apartment building on 3 separate occasions, taken by the private investigator I'd hired after finding her earring in his car.
But the most damning evidence was David's own handwriting, a detailed plan I discovered hidden in his home office, outlining how he would announce our separation at a public event where I couldn't make a scene. He'd calculated that the social pressure would prevent me from fighting back, that I'd be too shocked and embarrassed to respond effectively. He'd underestimated both my resilience and my capacity for strategic thinking. While David had been plotting his grand exit, I'd been securing my future. The business, which he'd always assumed was partly his, despite never contributing financially, was and had always been entirely in my name. My inheritance from my grandmother had funded the initial setup and expansion. My relationships had built its reputation. My eye for talent and strategy had generated its profits. David's architectural practice, meanwhile, was struggling. He'd lost 2 major clients in the past year due to what I now realized were stress-related mistakes, the pressure of maintaining his double life affecting his professional judgment. The financial strain had led him to suggest combining our business accounts for efficiency, a proposal I'd politely declined while quietly documenting his motivation. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Patricia Hernandez, my attorney and friend for 15 years. Elena, I just got your text. He actually did it? At the anniversary party? In front of 60 people, including 2 journalists and a photographer from the Business Journal. I was walking slowly through the small courtyard behind our building, needing to move while my adrenaline settled. The envelope is in play. Perfect timing. The papers are filed and will be served tomorrow morning. How are you feeling?
Powerful, I said, surprising myself with the honesty of it. For the first time in years, completely powerful. Patricia laughed. Good, because David's about to learn some hard truths about property law and separate assets. His little speech tonight is going to cost him more than he ever imagined. An hour later, I was sitting in my favorite late-night cafe, a small place where local professionals gathered to unwind and network. The normalcy of it, the smell of coffee, the sound of quiet conversations about business and life grounded me after the surreal evening. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from friends who'd been at the party. I responded only to close allies. I'm fine. Everything is handled. We'll explain tomorrow. But it was the text from Maria Santos, a young entrepreneur whose business I'd helped launch, that moved me most. Ms. Vasquez, whatever just happened tonight, know that you changed my life by believing in my vision. You're the strongest woman I know. A second message came from Isabella, who'd apparently seen something on social media. Mom, Jasmine just texted me something about Dad at your party. Call me when you can. I'm worried. My heart clenched. This was exactly what I'd been trying to avoid. Isabella learning about her father's betrayal through social media gossip during her final semester.
I called Isabella immediately, needing to control how she learned about tonight's events.
Isabella, sweetheart, your father and I are separating. He chose tonight to announce it publicly, which wasn't ideal, but I want you to hear this from me directly. Silence. Then, separating? Mom, you guys seemed fine at Christmas. People become very good at hiding things, honey. But I need you to know that none of this affects how much we both love you. This is between your father and me. Is there someone else? Her voice was small, younger than her 21 years. I closed my eyes, wishing I could protect her from this truth. Yes, someone from the office. But Isabella, I need you to focus on your finals. We'll talk more when you're home next month. Mom, I'm not a child. I can handle knowing the truth. She was right. Isabella had always been mature beyond her years, a young woman who'd inherited my practical nature and her father's charm. Her name is Sophia. She's young, and I believe she was as surprised by your father's announcement tonight as I pretended to be. Pretended to be? I smiled, despite everything. My daughter was too perceptive. I may have been prepared for this moment. We'll discuss that when you're home. I thought about strength as I sipped my coffee, watching late-night pedestrians pass by the cafe's windows. For years, I'd defined strength as endurance, weathering David's moods, supporting his career transitions, maintaining peace in our marriage, even when it meant diminishing myself. Tonight, I'd discovered a different kind of strength, the power that comes from preparation, from refusing to be a victim of someone else's narrative. My phone rang. David.
I let it go to voicemail, then listened to his message. Elena, I don't know what you think you're proving, but we need to talk. Sophia and I never meant for it to happen this way. The announcement tonight, that wasn't how we planned it. And please don't tell Isabella about this yet. Let me explain things to her properly. The admission was already incriminating him further. Patricia would love that recording. But his concern for Isabella, however misguided, reminded me that despite his catastrophic judgment, he was still our daughter's father. A second voicemail followed an hour later, his voice different now, smaller, uncertain. I opened the envelope. We need to discuss this privately. Please call me back. And Elena, Isabella texted me. She knows something happened tonight. We need to figure out how to handle this together. I deleted both messages and ordered another coffee. By morning, word had spread through our business community like wildfire. Our company Instagram had gained 3,000 followers overnight, with people sharing stories of their own public betrayals and praising my composed response. Several news outlets had picked up the story, not as gossip, but as a powerful example of a woman refusing to be publicly humiliated. Isabella called me at 7 a.m. Mom, I'm driving down. I'll be there in 4 hours. Sweetheart, you have classes. Mom, my family is falling apart and you think I care about introduction to media ethics? I'm coming home. The determination in her voice reminded me of myself at her age. There was no point arguing. David arrived at the office at 9 a.m., looking haggard and desperate. I was reviewing insurance documents with Patricia when he appeared in the doorway. Behind him, unexpectedly, stood Isabella. My daughter had driven down from NYU overnight, her dark hair pulled back in the same messy bun she'd worn since high school when she was determined to handle something serious. Mom! She crossed the room and hugged me tightly. I'm not letting you deal with this alone. Over her shoulder, I saw David's face, a complex mixture of shame, relief, and apprehension. Whatever our personal disaster, We were still Isabella's parents, and her presence changed the entire dynamic of what was about to unfold. "Isabella, sweetheart, you should be studying for finals," I said, though my heart swelled with pride at her fierce loyalty. "I can study here. Besides, someone needs to keep you two from destroying each other." She gave her father a look that could have withered flowers. "Dad, I can't believe you announced this at Mom's anniversary celebration, in front of everyone." "Elena, please. We need to talk about this privately." "Actually," Patricia said, standing smoothly, "this is quite public now. Your performance last night was witnessed by 60 people, and several posted about it online. The envelope contained divorce papers, which you opened in front of witnesses. Everything is proceeding according to legal protocol." David's face went white. "Divorce papers? Elena, I never said I wanted a divorce. I said I was leaving. That could mean anything." Isabella snorted. "Dad, you publicly announced you were leaving Mom for someone else. What exactly did you think that meant?" I finally looked at him directly. "David, your leaving included moving in with Sophia and combining your assets to purchase that downtown apartment. I have the real estate agent's emails." I slid a printed copy across my desk. "Your deposit was made 3 weeks ago using funds from our joint account." The color drained completely from his face as he recognized his own signature on the purchase agreement. Isabella leaned over to read the document, her expression growing darker.
Dad, you bought a place with her while you were still married to Mom? How did you... David stammered. "The same way I found out about the hotel bookings, the jewelry purchases, and the business credit card charges for your romantic dinners. I pay attention, David. It's what made me successful in this business." Patricia opened her briefcase, removing a thick folder. "Mr. Vasquez, since you chose to make your intentions public, we're proceeding accordingly. The law is quite clear when it comes to premarital property and businesses built independently during marriage." "Wait," David stammered. "The business. I supported Elena's dream. I encouraged her to take risks. That has to count for something." I couldn't help but laugh, a sound that seemed to echo off the office walls. "David, you told me for years that my work was frivolous and that I should get a real job. You complained about every late night I spent here, every weekend client event, every dollar I invested in growth. Support isn't the word I'd use. That's not... I didn't mean..." He looked around desperately, perhaps hoping Sophia would materialize to help him, but she was notably absent. "Sophia said you'd be reasonable about this, that you'd want to handle things quietly." "Sophia said?" Patricia's eyebrows rose. "How interesting. And what exactly does your girlfriend understand about your wife's legal rights?" Isabella stood up abruptly. "I need some air. This is disgusting." She headed for the door, then turned back. "Dad, I hope she was worth destroying our family for."
The next few hours unfolded with the precision of a well-orchestrated business presentation. David's desperate attempts to claim partial ownership of the business were systematically dismantled by documentation showing that every major investment, every relationship with clients and partners, every strategic decision had been mine alone. His contributions had been limited to occasional complaints about my workaholic tendencies and suggestions that I might be happier in a less demanding career.
The apartment purchase fell through when the bank froze our joint accounts pending divorce proceedings. David's romantic gesture had become a financial nightmare, leaving him and Sophia without the dream home they'd planned and facing penalties for breach of contract. By afternoon, Sophia herself appeared at the office, looking young and overwhelmed in a way that made me momentarily sad for her. Isabella, who'd been working on her laptop in the reception area, looked up with undisguised hostility. "Mrs. Vasquez, could we talk?" I gestured to the chairs in my office consultation area, where I typically met with clients and partners. Sophia perched on the edge of her seat, looking nothing like the confident professional I'd hired. Isabella followed us in, positioning herself protectively beside my chair. "I want you to know I never knew about the announcement last night. David said he was going to talk to you privately first." Isabella crossed her arms. "So you knew he was planning to leave my mother? You just didn't know when?" Sophia's face flushed. "It's more complicated than that." "Actually, it's not," Isabella replied coldly. "You had an affair with a married man. It's pretty straightforward." I studied Sophia's face, using the same analytical skills I applied to evaluating business proposals. "What did you think was going to happen, Sophia? You were having an affair with a married man. How did you imagine it would end?" She looked down at her hands. "He said you two had been growing apart for years, that you were more like business partners than spouses, that the marriage had been over in everything but name for a long time." "And you believed him?" "I wanted to believe him," she admitted, tears starting to fall. "He made me feel special, sophisticated, like I was part of something bigger than just my entry-level job." I felt a complex mix of emotions watching this young woman crumble. Anger at her participation in destroying my marriage, pity for her naivete, but also recognition of my own younger self, eager to please, willing to believe what I wanted to hear, susceptible to the attention of older, seemingly successful men. "Sophia, you're talented and intelligent. You don't need a married man to make you feel special. You certainly don't need one who would put you in this position." She nodded miserably. "I know that now." The apartment falling through, watching him panic when the bank called, I realized I don't know him at all. When things got complicated, he started blaming me for encouraging him to leave you. "Classic behavior," Patricia observed from where she sat reviewing contracts. "When men like David get consequences for their choices, they look for someone else to blame." Isabella, surprisingly, spoke up. "Look, I think what you did was horrible, but you're young and you made a stupid mistake. Don't let him destroy your career, too." 3 months after David's spectacular public announcement, the divorce was finalized.
He received his personal possessions, his struggling architectural practice, and enough financial support to find a modest apartment. Exactly what the law required, nothing more. I kept the business, the house we'd shared, which had been my premarital property, and my dignity. More importantly, the business experienced an unexpected renaissance. The story of my composed response to public humiliation had attracted media attention that translated into increased visibility and new opportunities. My client base doubled within 6 weeks. 3 employees I'd been mentoring received major career opportunities. My refusal to be broken had become inspiration for other women facing similar challenges. Isabella had taken a leave from her final semester to stay with me through the legal proceedings, despite my protests. "Mom, journalism school will still be there next fall. My family needed me now." Her presence had been a gift I didn't know I needed.
Watching her navigate the complexities of adult disappointment with grace and wisdom reminded me where my true legacy lay. Not just in the business I'd built, but in the woman I'd raised. "You know what I've learned from all this?" Isabella said one evening as we walked through the office after closing. "Dad thought he was trading up, but he was actually trading down. He gave up a woman who built an empire for someone who couldn't even land a permanent job." Sophia left town quietly, accepting a position with an organization in Portland. Before she departed, she stopped by the office one final time.
Isabella was working on applications to journalism graduate programs when Sophia arrived. "I keep thinking about what you said, about not needing someone else to feel special," she told me. "I got the Portland job on my own merit. My portfolio, my recommendations, my interview skills. It feels different than getting opportunities through other means." I was genuinely glad to hear it. "You're young, Sophia. You'll recover from this and build something real for yourself." "I'm sorry," she said simply, "for all of it, especially for hurting Isabella. She didn't deserve to have her family destroyed by my poor judgment." Isabella looked up from her laptop. "Apology accepted. Just don't make the same mistake again." After Sophia left, Isabella came over and hugged me. "I'm proud of how you handled that. You could have been cruel, but you chose to be kind. Cruelty doesn't build anything worthwhile, and I want you to remember that when you face your own difficult moments." 6 months later, I stood in the office during our latest client appreciation event, surrounded by the soft murmur of successful business relationships being built and maintained. The space buzzed with energy. Clients discussing new projects, employees networking with enthusiasm, partners taking notes on opportunities that would launch new ventures. Isabella was back at NYU, finishing her delayed final semester with a renewed sense of purpose. Her senior thesis explored how women rebuild their identities after public betrayal, using my story as a case study. She'd interviewed dozens of women who'd faced similar situations, creating a powerful narrative about resilience and reinvention. David had attempted contact several times, his tone shifting from anger to bargaining to what seemed like genuine remorse. I'd maintained polite distance, responding only when legal matters required it.
His architectural practice had stabilized after he accepted reality and focused on rebuilding professionally rather than romantically. Through mutual friends, I'd heard he was dating someone age-appropriate, a fellow architect who shared his interests and seemingly had no interest in drama. I hoped it was true, not for his sake, but because it meant he was learning to build rather than destroy. My phone buzzed with a text from Isabella. "Mom, saw the Business Journal article about your expansion. You're my hero. Can't wait to be home for spring break to see the new space." And another from my sister Carmen, who'd flown in from Chicago for tonight's event. "Watching you in your element, I'm reminded why you've always been my inspiration. This business, these relationships, the way you've turned your pain into purpose, it's incredible." Looking around the office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, complete alignment between who I was and what I was doing. The woman who'd stood frozen while her husband tried to publicly humiliate her had evolved into someone who could transform crisis into opportunity, betrayal into empowerment. But more than that, I'd shown my daughter that strength isn't about enduring abuse. It's about refusing to let someone else's failure diminish your worth. Isabella was entering the world with tools I'd never had, the knowledge that she deserved better than someone else's midlife crisis, and the confidence to demand it. The envelope I'd handed David that night hadn't just contained divorce papers. It had contained my refusal to be diminished by someone else's failure to appreciate what we'd built together.
In trying to destroy me publicly, David had inadvertently launched me into the most successful phase of my career and deepened my relationship with our daughter. The best revenge I'd discovered wasn't getting even. It was getting better, then using that improvement to lift up others facing their own moments of transformation. As the evening wound down and the last clients departed with new partnerships in motion, I walked through the office one final time, checking details and ensuring everything was properly arranged. This space, that David had once dismissed as my hobby, now employed 12 people, had launched dozens of professional careers, and had become a symbol of what's possible when you refuse to accept someone else's limited vision of your worth. Tomorrow, Isabella would call with updates about her graduate school acceptances. New clients would submit proposals. Partners would inquire about projects that spoke to their own stories of transformation. Tonight, I simply stood in the quiet beauty of the business I'd built, surrounded by the success that spoke to the resilience of the human spirit, grateful for the crisis that had forced me to discover not just my own strength, but the importance of modeling that strength for the next generation. The shattering champagne glass had marked an ending, but like the best business strategies, it had also been the beginning of something entirely new. Not just for me, but for the daughter who'd witnessed her mother refuse to be broken, and who would carry that lesson forward into her own extraordinary life.